The world burned. My family built the coalition from the ashes. I mutated into the apex variant, the nightmare they call the zombie queen. They drained my blood for weapons. They cracked my ribs open and grafted a live bomb directly onto my beating heart. Then the horde breached the walls. The remnants of humanity cornered themselves on a dead rock. Extinction approached. Despair choked the crowd. They collapsed in the dirt. A laugh rattled up my throat. They forgot one crucial detail. My chest still holds a ticking bomb. They designed the cell block for the worst of humanity. The unredeemable, the apex predators of the apocalypse. The deepest levels of the prison drown in a freezing, oppressive void. Total sensory deprivation. Light and sound simply go to die here. Time blurred into a meaningless static. 4 months, 6, maybe longer. I curled into the farthest corner, welcoming the pitch-black darkness. It hid the grotesque reality of my warped, swollen limbs and the purple bruised necrosis of my own skin. I squeezed my eyes shut. I tried to block out the truth, but the jagged, wet rasp of air tearing through my own lungs forced my eyes open. A constant, suffocating reminder, I was the monster now. Hours dragged by. Then, a sudden mechanical grind shattered the silence. The heavy bronze vault door groaned open. A figure stood in the harsh backlight, hurling a burlap sack onto the concrete floor. Thick hazmat gear swallowed every inch of his skin. But the glint of steel on his tactical belt caught my eye. I gave him that exact hunting knife for his birthday 2 years ago. Wesley. Wesley barely survived the academy. He scraped by as a teaching assistant for years. We shared that underdog status. In this dark era, my parents practically walk on water. Victor and Meredith built the coalition from the ashes. 10 years of slaughtering the infected and constructing safe zones made them legends. Ronan, my older brother, dominates the front line, the only S-tier commander. They called him the last hope of mankind. I am the genetic disappointment, frail, sickly. Victor forced me into the academy to toughen up my pathetic constitution. 3 years of brutal training, and my combat stats remained at 0. Everyone babied me anyway. Wesley always covered for me. He rigged my failing scores just to keep me enrolled. Seeing a familiar face sparked a frantic, desperate heat in my chest. I lunged toward the door. I tried to scream Wesley's name. A guttural, demonic snarl ripped from my throat instead. Panic flooded my system. I waved my rotting arms wildly, trying to sign a single question. Where was Ronan? Metal tore through cartilage. A white-hot spike ruptured my stomach. I stared down at my own abdomen. The birthday gift I gave him is buried to the hilt in my gut. Wesley backpedaled. Terror stretched across his eyes behind the visor. He turned and sprinted down the corridor, abandoning his favorite blade in my flesh. My clawed fingers wrapped around the handle. I slowly pulled the knife free. I dragged a rag across the steel, wiping away the thick, blackish sludge of my own blood. The gaping hole in my stomach was already knitting back together, muscle fibers stitched closed in seconds. Unstoppable cellular regeneration. No one ever mentioned the side effects of mutation. They never told me the monsters still feel the agonizing burn of every wound. The pain finally dulls into a throbbing ache. The burlap sack on the floor catches my attention. Usually, they fed me garbage. Bags of rotting roadkill, rancid meat, or fist-sized mutated rat. I clawed the bag open, my fingers scraping against something massive and scaly, a single, heavy triangular mass. I dragged my hand along the texture in the dark, then I brushed against a long, split muscle, a severed python head. I froze, my blood instantly turning to ice. I scrambled up the rough concrete wall, my mutated claws digging into the ceiling like a gecko. I was terrified of snakes. Ronan once threw a rubber snake at me when we were kids. My lungs seized on the spot. I passed out and burned with a 104-degree fever for 3 days straight. Meredith didn't just ground him, she took a tactical bat into his back. Ronan took the brutal strikes without a single flinch. Then he sat by my bed, bleeding, refusing food or water for 72 hours until my fever broke. I hung there in the pitch black, the phantom weight of my family pressed against my chest. I missed them so much my ribs physically ached. My mutation must be a PR nightmare for the coalition. Those stubborn politicians were probably tearing Victor and Meredith apart, demanding answers to calm the panicked masses. I dropped back down to the freezing floor. I couldn't be a burden anymore. I needed calories. I needed to survive long enough to see them again. I gripped the severed python head. I hyped myself up. I've choked down radioactive sewer rats. What's a little reptile? Squeezing my eyes tightly shut, I desperately tried to convince myself it was just a massive double bacon cheeseburger. Just pretend, I repeated like a mantra. 10 minutes later, the heavy bronze vault door groaned open. The blinding halogen hallway light framed the scene, a nightmarish freak ripping raw, bloody scales from a severed snake head. Wesley's betrayal still burned in my gut. Anxiety instantly swallowed any flicker of hope. I dragged my feet forward. The heavy iron collar around my neck choked me as the chain hit its limit. 2 figures stood just out of reach. Their eyes held zero warmth, my best friend, and my biggest crush. They aced their elite trial 6 months ago and deployed to the hot zones. Right before shipping out, Blaze pressed a silver chain into my palm. He told me to wait for him. We grew up together. I knew exactly what that necklace meant. It belonged to his late mother, Marie. I remembered staring into his soft, smiling eyes, my pulse hammering a frantic beat against my throat. I spent every single afternoon waiting by the academy gates, obsessed with his return. Now he was finally here. And I looked like a rotting corpse. My trembling claws fumbled with the clasp at the back of my neck. I pulled the silver chain free and held it out, offering it to Blaze. I just wanted him to see me. To know that Rowena was still trapped inside this decayed shell. Blaze slapped my hand away and snatched the metal. I never told you the truth about my mother. I didn't want to trigger your anxiety, he spat, his face twisting into a mask of unrecognizable disgust. 14 years ago, the infection took our neighbor, Ned. And he slaughtered her. She just stepped out to grab a birthday cake for me. He ripped her throat out on our own front porch. He dragged her body away and tore her limb from limb until there was nothing left but splinters of bone. She was so goddamn pure. She pitted that old man. She fixed his broken porch, shared our rations with him, and he butchered her. His jaw tightened. So don't you dare. You soulless, bloodthirsty freaks don't get the right to touch my mother's things. The words didn't just hurt. They detonated inside my chest cavity. A massive, invisible blade cleaved straight through my ribs. My lungs collapsed. The metallic taste of ash coated the back of my throat. In that suffocating silence, the brutal, irreversible reality of the virus finally crushed me.